So today I'll be talking about prototyping, especially for iOS apps. I'm Tom Bowden, and I work at a new startup called Untitled with Matt. And well, first of all, who here has prototyped an iOS app? 6 people, okay. So, are you designers or developers?
Developer.
Okay, great. So a mixture is great.
Yeah.
So let's get started. Okay, so let's just start with what a prototype is, or how I have defined the prototype. Well, it comes from the Greek word for primitive form, and basically it's the first step in creating a product. I think a lot of people use the word prototype in different ways, so I'm going to be using it as like kind of a first draft of an actual app, and basically prototypes are not supposed to be perfect. They're just steps in getting to the actual finished product. The idea is the designer can see if the prototype will work or not from a user standpoint. If you look at the actual definition, the prototype is an initial model of an object built to test a design. And that word test is really important. If we're going to see whether a product actually works in the actual building phase, the prototyping phase, we're going to test whether it works. And that means asking people, is this something they can use? Is this something that they find easy to work with or to use in everyday life? And so the prototype is that test. Okay, why do we prototype? Well, the idea is to get your idea for a product into the form of an app as quickly as possible. And I think that's the word quickly is really key here. I mean, a lot of engineers here will know that they have the power to make an app, and you can get into Xcode and start coding straight away. And I think that's very powerful, but it may be better to take a step back first and actually really go ahead and just quickly iterate on several prototypes first before you step into the code. So that's the idea of prototyping. And up to about 12 months ago, the prototyping tools were not that great. So I think this is really the time where prototyping is coming into its own, and I think anyone can actually do that now. So again, you can get your ideas into the app form quickly. You can get feedback from others. The testing the design is really key for the prototype, and you can iterate quickly. Another idea about prototyping is you're never going to invest too much time or money in the prototype itself. It's just a stepping stone on the way to building the product. And if you decide you don't like the prototype, or the users come back to you and say, this isn't very good, you can throw it away, and you haven't really invested that much time or money, and you won't have to worry about throwing it away completely. So that's the idea of the prototype. I don't know how many of you like the lean startup approach, but it's central. I think prototyping is central to the lean startup. And one of the things that Eric Ries, who wrote the Lean Startup book, talks about is validated learning. And startups exist not just to make stuff, make money, or even serve customers. You're learning how to build a sustainable business. And this learning can be validated scientifically by running frequent experiments that allow entrepreneurs to test each element of their vision. And so that's really the prototype. Each time you build a new prototype, you can test it with users and see whether it's going to work before you go ahead and spend a lot of money and time building it. So that's, I think, really central to the lean approach. Okay, again, who should prototype? As I alluded to earlier, in the last year or so, prototyping software has become really, it's out there in the market. And some of it's very, very good. So I think anyone now, whether you're a designer or an engineer, or if you're on the business side of a startup, or anyone who's making a new product, you can really benefit from learning how to prototype with these tools now. Again, so if you're an engineer, and I think a lot of people here are engineers, I think you can step back from the code and do a prototype and test it before you go ahead and actually code it up. So I think there's a lot of power there with this approach. Business people. I think now, if you have an idea, you can now prototype it very quickly and show an engineer or show a designer and say, is this something that we could build? And I think that's, and it's good to be able to explain what you're doing in the form of a prototype rather than just use words. So I think there's a lot of advantages to this methodology. Okay, well, loads of new prototyping tools on the market currently. Do you guys recognize any of these softwares? Okay, which is your favorite? Anyone has a favorite? Professor Designer Ben, do you have a favorite here?
I'm really interested in using origami more.
Okay, great.
It's a tough one, but just paper also.
Paper, okay, great.
And pop works great. If
Right.
you sketch out on paper, you just snap a photo.
Right, yeah, exactly. So pop it works with, you just take a photo of your, you make a design your prototype on paper, you make photos and you can link them together with hotspots in the app. So I would consider that like a page-based layout tool.
I think for business people, Keynote is probably the best one.
Exactly. And Keynote is, I think, also really great for creating prototypes for iOS now, because the iOS app now allows portrait, which it didn't for a long, long time, so it made it a little bit tricky to make app prototypes. But now I think if you don't want to spend any money and you use Keynote already, then you could make very simple, but you can actually make them quite good-looking prototypes with Keynote.
Lots of great free templates available as well.
Right. For instance, has anyone used Flinto? That's a very new one that I've heard about and it's supposed to be quite good. So, but Origami and Avocado are based on the Quartz Composer, which is a visual programming tool. And I think they're also getting quite advanced with these things too. Frame is also a code-based prototyping tool, which uses CoffeeScript. I don't know if anyone's used that. Does everyone, or do all the engineers here actually go in and make prototypes in Xcode itself with storyboards? And
I've been using App Cooker.
okay.
Not in the list, but
It's on iOS itself, right?
yep.
Yeah.
Does it do scrolling now? And
Don't think it does scrolling. They might have something for the watch, I think, for scrolling.
okay.
I haven't looked into that recently.
Yeah, that was one of the main drawbacks to these tools about over a year ago. Like expensive, like even apps like Briefs didn't really do scrolling that well, or the transitions were kind of jittery. But now, pretty much all of the apps and tools out there, they allow for scrolling, which is really key, I think, to make a prototype seem realistic. Okay.
Another one I've used that wasn't on the list is called Blueprint.
Blueprints.
Yeah.
I think I've used that on also iOS, right?
Yeah.
That's also pretty. Has some problems also with scrolling too, right?
I haven't really noticed. I just started using it. That actually my client uses it. He likes it, so we're using it for this latest project.
It's a good one too. Yeah. So if we're going to differentiate between the different types, I think it's important to see where the strengths and weaknesses of each type of prototyping tool are. But the page-based would be like Keynote and like Pop. So you're basically laying out your UI as a series of pages, and you can link between them very quickly using hotspots or buttons. And but there's not too much control over what happens on a particular page. So you can't really do any animations based on where your scroll position is, or things like that. The layer-based tools do allow you for sort of page, specifically on a page, you can actually control the animation. So an advantage to page-based tools are the layer-based tools, but the one drawback of them is usually that you can't lay out the whole app, because you're concentrating on the micro interactions on a page, and the software is designed with just one artboard. And you can see things going on in the artboard, but you can't link up so many artboards like you can with, say, Keynote. And then you have code-based tools like the visual types like Origami and Avocado, and Quartz Composer, or the code-based ones like Framer. But again, it's generally concentrating around one design on one page. And I think if you wanted to actually create the whole prototype, you might as well go into Xcode and just actually code it up, because there's not much advantage to writing the code in CoffeeScript or in Swift. So there's kind of a balance there. Okay, which tool is best? Well, this app called Principle for Mac came out a few months ago, and I've really jumped on it. I really love it. I think it offers both the page-based and layer-based advantages of these apps, and it's very easy to learn how to use. It's easy to share the finished prototype, and so this is the one that I would really recommend at this time. Although new apps come out all the time, like Flinto I've heard is really great too, so maybe in a few months' time there'll be an even better tool. I just don't know, but it's changing so quickly now, and so many apps are coming out every month that it's hard to make a decision as to which one to go with. But at the moment, I think this is the number one. Really importantly, and I think this is the advantage, I mean, if you can code up an app quickly in Swift with storyboards, you still have to wait every time you want to build. You have to wait and build and run and see the result and go back and forth and back and forth. Here you see the changes live. I mean, maybe in the future with with the playgrounds in Swift, you can do this, but right now it's difficult. The main advantage is you can see what you're doing immediately, and that immediate feedback for design is really important. So having a preview window that where you can see the results of your animations is really important. Okay, this is inside Principle. Just wanted to show you how easy it is to make a simple prototype. So I was thinking of doing this as a live prototyping session, but a lot can go wrong in a live prototype. So I just basically did a few screenshots and videos that are coming up in the next few slides. So just to describe the interface, you have the inspector here on the top left, and with a few buttons for creation of rectangles, text, and artboards. You have the layer panel here on the left, where you can see the various layers for each artboard. At the top there's an odd thing called drivers, which you may not be familiar with. I think it's very specific to Principle. It's kind of a timeline, but it's not a timeline, it's a space line. So depending on your X or Y scrolling position, you can keyframe the layers, which is really, really important for making micro interactions on the page. So I'll go into that later. On the right, you can see the live preview pane. The canvas is where you're going to be working on for most of the time in the middle here, and you have also an animation timeline at the bottom. So that's the whole UI for Principle. Any element that's outlined in green is the current artboard, and then on the top you have which animation is showing in the animation timeline. Right, so I just want to show a quick onboarding prototype that we did a while ago. We're actually going to scrap it, but it was one of those stepping stones on the way. And it's actually exported from Principle as a GIF, so it doesn't look that high quality, but you can see I'm scrolling a page view, and you can see the animations that happen on the page using the this is using the drivers within Principle quite heavily. So you can show how an onboarding flow in an app happens very, very quickly using Principle. The actual elements were made in Sketch 3, and Sketch and Principle work very well together. Okay, so here I'm going to quickly show, using a short video, how to create a scrollable view in Principle. And scrollable views in most of the prototyping tools in the past have been quite weak. So I'll show you how easy it is to do within. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Hopefully, I'll just play. Yep. So you basically just choose your artboard. You can choose any size of iPhone or iPad. I've chosen the 6 Plus. Named the artboard. I'm not sure how readable this is from the back, but here I'm just basically dragging on a rectangle, and if you create a square, so if you constrain the sides, you can just make the radius half of the width, and you have a perfect circle. And using I just added some text, so I'm just going to prototype up a very simple, say, Twitter type post in an app. as an example. So it's very easy to add text. I'm just using Principle for all of this, so not using even Sketch at this point. We also have the color palette here. So I'm just dragging out some elements from simple elements, so I'm going to just rename these elements here on the left. I'm running fast forward. Okay, so I'm grouping these elements into one post. So you can see you can actually act on the group or on a specific layer for your animations, which is quite powerful within Principle. So I'm just option dragging to duplicate these posts, and you have smart guides which will constrain the position or to show you where to put the elements so they're nicely lined up. And that's another nice advantage of Principle. I'm just going to color the circles so it looks a little bit nicer. Group them quickly. And I'm going to show you now, to create a scrollable list, all I have to do is pull the bottom of the group to the constraint of the view to get a scrollable list. And that's how fast it is to do a scrollable list within Principle. And that's a lot faster than most other tools. Okay, the next slide will show okay, so we're going to create a horizontal scroll, which is also something that most other apps can't do. So I'm just going to create, say, a pulse-style news story view, creating, so the news stories will be in a horizontal sort of scrollable setup. Again, option dragging is to create new elements. So anyone who's familiar with, say, Sketch or Photoshop, there's a lot of similarities here. So just to distinguish the elements, I'm just going to color them. Then I'm going to group them together. Just name the group for simplicity. It's very hard to read, it's not very high resolution. And all I have to do is select scroll on the horizontal scale, and it will, well, see, it doesn't work. The reason is I haven't constrained the limit of the group to the artboard. And as soon as I do that, it will scroll. However, you can see that on the right, it's not giving me the desired behavior. It's not moving into the center. And the reason is it's taking, the group was, the bounds was the last square, and now I've moved that to the left, so I have to create a spacer. And so I'm going to create just a transparent rectangle here. So it's going to be, I made it 100% opaque, and I'm going to drop it into the scroll group, and that will then recognize that the actual limit of the scroll group is beyond the last square, and it works perfectly. So a little bit hacky there perhaps, but it works very easily. So I've added here, you can actually put various scroll directions into the same artboard. So I'm going to create a vertical scroll inside a horizontal scroll. So that's something that I think is you may not want to do this, but it is possible. I think you'll see within Apple's weather app, you have a horizontal scroll inside a vertical scroll. So you can see the days, and you can see more information on the vertical axis. So again, I'm just going to constrain the limits of the last square to the outline, and it should split up. Problem is I have to clip sublayers so it doesn't show outside the bounds. Again, this software does pretty much everything that you want for prototyping. Okay, so we're going to come up to page views and drivers. Drivers are the tricky part of Principle, so I just want to go through this in a little bit of detail. So the idea here is I'm going to create a new artboard. I've put a background color on it so it's easy to know where it is. I'm going to create basically different page views. And page views are different from scroll views in that they sort of snap to the next page, which is quite nice. And again, this is something you can do quite easily within Xcode if you know how to code, but it's very hard to do in any other sort of software. But here, it's been made very easy with this special page view control, which we'll see in a second. So again, I'm just making a group of views on an artboard. I'm going to, you can see I'm selected page here, and it will snap, or well, actually, again, I haven't constrained the boundaries of the group to the artboard. As soon as I do that, it should work. And it snaps nicely into place, which is very fast and very simple. Okay, the thing is, when you're making, I'm just going to make the card smaller, and I'm going to add that little hack where I'm going to add a transparent spacer so that it works properly. And after that, I'll show you how to make the page indicator, which is kind of a nice touch. When you're scrolling through pages, you want to see which page you're on, and you need to have a page indicator for that. So again, I want to show how easy it is within Principle to do that, to mock that up. So when I get past this, this spacer issue, I'll be able to cover that. And again, so now it works with the right, works perfectly as a page view control. I've added some views quickly. I've just fast forwarded through the text there, and now I'm going to make the page indicator. So basically just make little squares, make the radius half of the width of the square, and just quickly duplicate them by option dragging. So I'm just going to create quickly three little page indicators. And now I've opened up the driver panel within Principle. And you can see, well, it's hard to see here, but I'm going to choose opacity as the property of the layers that I'm going to keyframe. I move the scroll view, or the page, actually the page limited scroll view to the next point, and I keyframe it there again. So I'm showing the breakpoints of the scroll. So it's on the third page now. And again, I'm going to add, just simply by hitting the plus button there, create keyframes. Now on those keyframes, I'm going to change the property of opacity of the three dots so that we can see which page is being selected at the current time. So I'm just changing the opacity here to 30%, moving it to the second page, and for dots 1 and 3, change the opacity. And on the third page, for dots 1 and 2. So quite quick and simple. Hope this isn't too boring watching this. So there we are. So now when I scroll, you should be able to see the correct behavior. And on the live preview, it should be updating. I'm not sure if there we are. Good. So we have the correct behavior there. Okay. So in the drivers, this is this is where Principle really shines. You can change the properties of a lot of properties of the layers when you're scrolling either horizontally or vertically. So you can change the XY position of elements. You can change the width, the height, the scale, the angle, opacity, radius, and stroke width, which is pretty much, I don't think you can think of that many other things to do. It doesn't do 3D transforms, which is maybe a weakness, but I tend not to use 3D transforms in my mockups anyway, but I think Flinto does that, so there are some other apps that may have strengths where Principle has weaknesses. Okay, now I'm not going to go into all the detail of building an animation, because I think you get kind of bored watching just every detail. But if you create from one artboard to the next, basically the idea is you create the beginning state and the end state of any animation, and it will automatically build the animation between those two states. So you can fire the animation from one artboard to the next using any of these events, which is quite an exhaustive list. And the beauty of Principle is you can change the animation curve to whatever you want. So you can have ease in, ease out. You can actually pull on the curve like a Bezier curve and change the shape to whatever you want. So you can really make your own animations in any way you like with Principle.
Silly question, but what's with the emoticon after Linear?
I think the designer of this product wanted to show never create a linear animation. It just looks terrible. Yeah, it's kind of odd, yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to show you the end. I mean, I quickly built out this prototype that I use just for this display purpose. I've added a couple of artboards with. So I wanted to show that you can do push and pop. You can do modal transitions on the artboards. You can do pretty much anything you can think of if you position the layers correctly on the artboard. So I just want to show how this looks at the end here. So you can see now all elements in use. So I've created basically a simple tab bar at the bottom, so you can just go through the different artboards or within the app. And we've looked at how to make these first three. On the fourth, I've just created a simple slider. And you can also do things like button down animations, and you can do push pop animations. I'm going to show a modal sort of display there and back and forth. So you can do any sort of iOS style transition that you like using this. Okay, some of the weak points of Principle are you cannot access the sensors of the mobile device. So I think if you want to do that, you should use maybe Framer, or there are a few other apps that do allow you to do this. I think they're mainly code-based apps, though. So you can only work with static images. I don't think you can throw in GIFs or any. I don't think you can even put sound files in or anything like that. But I hope that's coming in the future. Also because every single state of your app has to have a beginning artboard and an ending artboard for every animation. You can have a lot of artboards in your canvas, and sometimes that's overwhelming. You can have 50 or 60 artboards, and it becomes quite difficult to work with them. So I'm hoping that the designer of this app is going to be able to group these at some point in the future, like you can do with Quartz Composer. And another thing, I think this is really important for the engineers. Another weakness is you cannot extract the coordinates of the layers or the animation timings that easily. So if you want to find these out, either the designer has to write them down for you, or you have to go into the app yourself and actually check every single animation, every single coordinate. And that's something I think that these apps should be working on. I hear that Pixate is also an app which is very popular and just recently bought by Google. They're going to try and export the whole project into Xcode so that the engineers can see all of this information to make it easier to actually create the actual app. So that's a weakness currently of Principle. Okay, just some tips for designers here. Sketch 3 really works well with Principle. You can drag layers from Sketch 3 directly into Principle, and it works very, very, very well. You can actually, if you have several artboards in which the same asset is involved, you just have to drag it in once and it changes it for all of them. So it's a very nice workflow. Another pet peeve of mine is a lot of designers are still designing at 2x, which is really not a good thing. Now we have at 3x assets with the iPhone 6 Plus. Please design in points and export using a vector-based program like Sketch into 1x, 2x, and 3x. That's something that still happens far too often. Another tip is if you have an iPhone 6, for instance, design for that, because you're going to be using that for testing, and then worry about the other sizes later, because you don't want to do all this work up front and then decide I'll have to scrap it all. Just design for the app, for the size of the device you're testing on, and then create the other sizes later. There's lots of UI templates now for Sketch, for Photoshop online for free. Just make use of them, they're fantastic. If you want to do user tests and record them on the device, I can really recommend Lookback. You will need a jailbroken device for this, but it's a great app, and you can actually, yes, please.
Sorry, you'll need a jailbroken device if you're testing with a prototype made in one of these things, but
Yes.
it also has an SDK that you can incorporate in your app if you
Yes, that's true. If you want to build it
into your app.
I'm talking about pre actually building the app.
Right.
You can just use it with any prototyping app,
Right.
as long as it works in a jailbroken environment. But yeah, we've used that once and it went very well, right? And it's very, very good software. Okay, well, thanks for listening. You can contact me here at this address, and any questions now, please? Sure. Please.
So I'm curious about widgets for like iOS specific. Is there anything that it has for that? It seems like it's a very generic kind of like
Yes.
keynote-ish type of thing,
Yeah.
not specific, not really specific for iOS. Or are there widgets, or would I need to download a sketch pack of like iOS widgets or something like that?
Well, the artboards are there for any size of iPhone device, but because there's so many free UI templates out there, I don't think there's any point. I mean, just use them.
Okay.
But there's no like spinner widgets or anything like that, unfortunately.
Okay. And testing on a device, how do you get
Yes.
from?
Yeah, that's very important. It's really simple. You can download an app. I think it's free. It's a mirror app, and basically, if you're connected via USB, you can see live updates on your actual device, and also in the preview pane. If you want to share it with others, other people can download the app for free also, and you can just put it in Dropbox or email them the file, and they can open it right there on their device. You can also export to .mov files or .gif files, so you have animated GIFs. It's very popular for people putting things on Dribble, things like that. It's very fast and very simple. So it's very easy to share your prototypes.
Thank you.
Ben?
You mentioned like designing for multiple screen sizes. Does it have struts or anything that you can do to not just do a fixed?
Yeah, that's a good point. It doesn't yet. I mean, I know Sketch has a couple of plugins now for constraints. I'm hoping that at some point that will also come to principle, but no, it doesn't have that yet.
Not that we use a lot of paint code for it. It really helps a lot with that
Yeah.
side of things.
I think that's a very good point. A lot of like paint code is great for getting into also the data into Xcode, and now if you feel comfortable in Xcode, I mean, you know, a designer called Mainto brought out Spring. I think someone alluded to it a few weeks ago, and you know, even if you don't know how to code at all, you can still make animations within the storyboards of Xcode and do prototypes that way too. But I'm just a little bit bothered by the build and run cycle in Xcode. It just slows me down a lot.
Yeah, the top pane that you show for the animations, that's so valuable.
Yeah, it's really great.
Yeah,
It
the
really
ease
make,
in and ease out, like in paint code, we don't have that, and
yeah.
you have to write your own
Mm.
formulas to get it to work, and
Yeah.
I'm not very good at that. So.
Yeah, so the idea is really just to get a prototype done as fast as possible, test it, and throw it away if it doesn't work. So just get that cycle of iteration going, and that's the beauty of these apps now. They actually allow anyone within a few hours to make a working prototype. And I think it's really a new age now of prototyping coming up.
One pretty cool thing in the latest paint code is it does let you, I don't know how they do it, but it has a new feature called telepathy that lets you live preview changes made to your style kit on the device, which is,
Right,
I have no idea how it works, so
right.
magically probably.
Yeah. In Paintcode, can you do transitions between artboards? Is that possible?
No, it's
Yep.
much more just individual elements.
That's right, yeah. So this is more of a comprehensive solution. I think other tools have strengths in certain areas, like Paintcode is great for a lot of things. But this is the best overall tool that I've seen up till now, and hopefully, you know, it'll be okay for the next few months because I've paid $100 for it. Anyone else there, please?
Yeah. So I've been drifting among a lot of prototyping tools. So far, InVision is my favorite, but I've
Right.
never tried it, so I'm gonna give it a try.
Sure.
$100 is, you know,
Well, you can
not
use
so
it.
expensive.
It's not a negligible amount.
Yeah.
You can use it for 14 days, and it only
Okay,
counts.
that's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, it only counts for the days that you actually use it. So
Okay.
if you start it today and you don't touch it for 3 months, you can still use it again 3
Okay.
months.
And no constraint for you know, in terms of features.
I don't think so. I think it's completely,
Okay.
you know, complete in terms of features for the trial version.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like, I might have missed the point, but some of the tools I used was like completely on a cloud basis.
Right.
This one is like
This is a Mac app.
you do it all
All on your Mac, yes.
and you like send those files to the testers. Or
Yes, you can send it by email, or you send it put it on Dropbox, and they just have to open that item from their email or from Dropbox link, and then it will just open. It will give you an action sheet, and you can open it within Principle if you have the Mirror app downloaded from the App Store.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then like if you made like some prototypes and then at some point, oh no, that was not. Some of the problems I have is like if I stop like using the service,
Mhm.
you know, I can't distribute the prototypes. But
Right.
this one is like local file, so you don't have that kind of problem.
Yeah, no problems
Okay.
at all. I mean, that's probably one of the strengths of Principle. That it's so
Okay.
easy to share.
Thank you.
I wish the app, the iOS app, cached the latest design. That's something we've had.
Yeah.
You know, you have to save it to your Dropbox, save it to your device in Dropbox, and then hopefully that works. So the next time you actually try to show someone, you can get to it fast enough and don't have to wait for the download, etc. And I wish Principle Mirror app actually cached the latest prototype, but it just doesn't yet. Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you very much.